watch the movie Arrival? It is an interesting sci-fi. Arrival is a 2016 American science fiction drama film, directed by Denis Villeneuve and scripted by Eric Heiser from a spec script. It stars Amy Adams, Jeremy Renner, and Forest Whitaker, and is based on the short tale Story of Your Life. It's basically about a linguist that is enlisted by the US Army to figure out how to speak to the aliens who landed on Earth or arrived on Earth before a war breaks out. So of course, alien sci-fi, we're here to talk about the aliens called the Heptapods. The Heptapods, meaning seven-legged creature, are extraterrestrial sentient species that travel through space. The two heptapods that we end up seeing in the movie are known as Abbott and Costello, and they sought to connect with Dr. Louise Bank, played by Amy Adams, and Ian Donnelly, from their ship in Montana after initially making contact with humans. What they're basically doing is offering Earth their language, trying to communicate with them in exchange for future assistance. See, they need the humans' help later on. For whatever reason, we don't know. Their goal is to unify humanity, because if they're gonna need assistance from humans, humans can't be fighting amongst themselves. Basically, they need us to help them, so we need to be on our best behavior and get along with each other. After all, we can't be unified with each other if we're always fighting. So that's what these monsters are telling the humans, that you must be unified because we're gonna need you. We're gonna give you this and some kind of technology, and yeah, you're gonna help us later. You owe us. Well, the reason why I'm revisiting this movie that I watched a very long time ago is because I want to talk about the aliens, of course, duh. I'm very excited because as I look back at these aliens, one thing that is running around in my mind is, what is their homeworld like? Where did they come from? We notice that the two aliens stay on their ship and there's some sort of atmosphere inside their ship. There's a section for the humans to be and a section for them to be, and there's a barrier with a whole bunch of mist inside of it. Kind of like the creatures from the mist that always have to exist in the mist. Also, I have a video on that. It's a theory as to why the creatures from the mist always stay in the mist. The reason why the heptapods stay in there is perhaps they aren't able to breathe Earth's atmosphere or withstand its gravity, so they never leave their ships on Earth and they leave it up to the people to come to the ship and talk to them. They always stay on their side and the humans stay on their side. After all, these creatures are basically humanoid-shaped squid that look like big buff humans that walk on finger legs. Their limbs are reminiscent of arthropod limbs, but they end in a tip that can split open to produce a starfish-like hand with 7 points. Everything is 7 with these creatures, so it's possible that the common ancestor had 7 legs, or 7 appendages, and their starfish hand appendage at the tip of their legs has a hole inside of it that is used to spray out ink so that they can communicate. They have 2 ways of communicating, and we'll talk about that later. The heptapods appear to walk with 5 limbs in the front and 2 in the rear, and they have the appearance of spindly hands walking on the fingers. They have dull gray fleshy looking skin with a rough texture, but no visible eyes or mouths on their body. These creatures are about 33 feet high, and the fact that they walk on these spindly little tips makes us believe that whatever their homeworld is, there is very low gravity. The theory is that less gravity leads to taller, lankier life, while more gravity or heavier gravity leads to shorter, flatter life. This might not be 100% true, because we know that even modern earthly life doesn't push the biological building components to their utmost limits. That usually happens as a result of harsh existence or environmental pressures. But basically the rule of thumb is this. On a world with very high gravity, the maximum limit is much lower, or maximum height is lower, so that means the largest dinosaurs or creatures would be much smaller than what we're used to seeing in the fossil record. And on a planet with very low gravity, you know, the kind where you can take a step and jump really high because you weigh much less, like on the moon, the maximum limit allows for creatures to be very tall. Reason being, on a planet with very high gravity, creatures need to keep themselves upright, and they need stronger, more expensive bones. All of their DNA and building blocks would go into making those bones fortified to withstand the gravity of the planet. But on a planet with lower gravity, like where these aliens come from, their bones, if they do have any, would be quite weak. That means it would actually be surprisingly easy to injure these aliens, which would require them to have another mode of protection, like their ink. Funny enough, these creatures are probably more like squid and octopus, which seems to be what they're based on. And because of the low gravity on their planet, that is how they're able to propel themselves as though they're in water. That's how they're also able to walk on their fingers, or tentacles, or whatever it is those things are. The aliens from Arrival use written script and low-pitched thrumming vocal communication that is unpronounceable by humans. So the other thing we know about these guys is that they have written communication and spoken communication. The written communication is what they use to communicate with other species, because it can be easily decoded. From what we know based on the movie, the vocal and written components have nothing to do with one another. Sound is represented in one way, but the inky inscriptions are probably how they form their thoughts. They don't have any eyes from what we can see. And the fact that they exist in like a misty area leads us to believe that their planet or region that they come from looks like this. Visibility would be useless in this case. Sure, they would use their ink, but who would be looking at it? They must have evolved to talk to each other, but then why would they even need this if they make sounds? Well, why do we need it and we make sounds? We know that humans started writing or drawing to convey what was in their head to the rest of everyone else. If you have a story and you want it to last a long time, or you want a large group of people to understand it and have it to last a while, you would write, to keep documents, to keep accounts. But as we see in the movie, when Abbott and Costello write something, it fades away very quickly. Now, if they don't have eyes and visibility would be useless in their world, how the hell would they be writing this and communicating with each other? It's possible that just like whales in our planet or our oceans, there might be different dialects amongst these creatures. Maybe this form of writing is uniformity, the way that mathematics is across cultures. Again, that does not answer how two different species of these creatures, these heptapods, would be able to read what the other one is putting out there. Notice that they always do clicking noises, the vocalizations that we're talking about. I have a theory that as they're forming this writing, whoever is listening or needs to hear it can hear it being formed. These creatures rely on sound to get around. Those clicking noises and vocalizations that they do are most likely a form of echolocation so that they can know how to get around. I doubt these creatures are always living in vast open spaces. They probably live in areas where they have to navigate their world around each other and other creatures. The way they would do that is through echolocation. Creatures in our world that use echolocation usually have that ability because they live in very dark areas, or they're nocturnal, animals like bats and dolphins, because we know that visibility isn't very good underwater. We know that an echo is the reflection of sound reaching a listener, and location is when you're trying to find something. So if you're putting echolocation together, you're using the echo to locate something. What basically happens is a creature like a bat will make a noise, and the sound waves that the bat makes will bounce off of objects in front of it and then go back to the bat so the bat knows where they are. You can try it. When you're in a room, start doing a whole bunch of noises. Try going, oh, oh! And as you get closer to a wall, listen and hear how the sound changes. Your sound waves will start to bounce off of hard objects, and you'll know when the wall is right in front of you, providing that you're not walking too fast. Some creatures will use electrical fields, but animals like dolphins will just use echoes. See how murky this water is? These large dolphins, called orca whales, also use echolocation to find their way through the water. You can't see more than a few feet in front of you when you're in murky water like this, and the deeper you go is the worse it is. So they always sing or make noises so they can tell if they're gonna bump into anything, or if there's any prey nearby. The sound of the echo will tell them if it's a big object, if it's a moving object, how far away it is, and possibly how fast it's moving. It sounds difficult to us, but animals who have evolved to have this ability, it's like nothing to them. So for the heptapods, this is probably the case. Now back to their writing. As you can see, when they start writing, they can manipulate their ink so that it seems to stand as a temporarily solid object, something that is suspended in animation or suspended in space, as you can see here. It is my belief that when that happens, if another member of their species is using echolocation, and based on this writing taking up space momentarily, their hearing is sensitive enough that it could detect the outline of this thing. And so imagine using your echolocation to bounce off of this object, or this suspended animation gas thing that maybe is a form of vapor or somewhat liquid and gas. Closing your eyes and making a sound of echolocation, having it bounce back into your ears, you can detect the outline of this thing and read it without seeing it. The way that a dolphin can probably tell the difference between an object that is circular in the distance and that is triangular. Now that explains how they would be able to read, quote unquote, each other's language. We also know that based on their physique, based on how tall they are, and the atmosphere that's on their ship, that they live on a world that has very low gravity. And clearly they live on a world or a region that has either very thick air, heavy gases, or very low visibility. Their planet could also be water dominated, which would cause their atmosphere to be much thicker than that of Earth and be composed largely of water vapor, which would also in turn create a very strong greenhouse effect. Such planets would have to either be too small to retain a dense hydrogen and helium envelope, or too close to their primary star to be stripped of these light elements. Otherwise, like our planets Uranus and Neptune, they would form a warmer version of an ice giant. It is possible that our heptapods probably live on a planet like this, obviously much smaller than Earth. All of that being said, what would other life be like on the planet? A planet shrouded in mist. It's possible there'd be little to no sunlight, so they wouldn't need a tough exterior, they wouldn't need a lot of melanin, there wouldn't be any need for bright colors since most of the time, can't see anything. There could be alien species of slug creatures that probably hunt in packs with sharp teeth. The teeth would be used for latching on to their prey and sucking pieces of their skin away. Since food might be scarce, it's possible that aliens on this planet, if they're predators, might not even kill their prey, but try to feed on their prey while keeping it alive. Kind of like what vampires would do when they keep on coming back and sucking for blood. Creatures like the heptapods would have a defense mechanism, and that would be a way to escape danger. Just like octopi and squid from our world, they would be able to quickly use that propulsion to swim away quickly by leaving a cloud of ink to distract the predator. If the predator does have the ability to see, it doesn't have the ability to see very far. And remember, I said that their ink could form sort of a little momentary solid gaseous liquid type thing. So if the predator that is hunting them is using echolocation as well, it would be distracted by this big cloud of hanging black ink in front of it, thinking that what it's hunting is still in front of it, while in fact the heptapod is long gone.
Sir, John Lee is taking off his hazmat suit. Permission to abort?
We have to assume that other creatures would have good hearing as well. So you're probably wondering, if these aliens are making all that noise, wouldn't it be easy for predators to find them? Well, it's possible because they have that means of escaping very quickly, that predators might not mess with them all that much. They can afford to be louder because they have a means to get away. Just like when you see octopi under the water, and they can't move necessarily fast. It's really easy to catch an octopus, but they do have a method of shooting out ink and propelling themselves away, so they leave a distraction and a bad tasting cloud of gunk. The predators will usually lose interest afterwards while the octopus tries to get away someplace else so it can camouflage. For all we know, these heptapods are probably relatives of the octopus, since there's this prevailing theory that octopi came from outer space. Or if you're going with the panspermia argument, the building blocks for the octopus or a possible ancestor came from whatever planet these guys came from and landed on Earth, and became the octopus while these guys became these things. Living on a planet that's small and has lower gravity, you'd probably see gargantuan creatures like they saw in the End of the Mist movie. Creatures that are even taller than the heptapods, whose size defies logic. Aliens on the heptapods planet would have their own natural defenses and means to get prey in order to survive on a planet where visibility is basically nilch. One thing that we'll find fascinating that I'll leave you with the heptapods is that the heptapods have the ability not just to communicate in the way they do, but also using time to communicate. The stunningly vivid sequence of loops in the movie reveals themselves to be a language that reflects the most godlike ability of them all, and it's the ability to see the future. Loops in time result in language loops, and the heptapods can do it, and later we see that Dr. Banks, the main character has that ability as well. Being able to look into the future and see her life with her daughter, relationships, achievements that she has way before they happen. This is one thing that makes these creatures so haunting, so reverent, and honestly pretty scary as well. If they come from a place where they can speak in time, what more is there on their world to discover? Now, I understand that this is basically just a facet of the movie to make it more interesting. It's totally possible that animals outside of our universe or solar system could exist in a completely different set of laws than we do in our world. I mean, physics is still a thing throughout our universe. And from what we know, these creatures probably came from our universe. We don't really know if they did or not. Also, it seems as though the time thing is very limited with them. While they can have sort of premonitions of the future, they can't really control it or manipulate it. Something clearly happens to them in the future that requires them to ask for humanity's help, even though I'm kind of confused because wouldn't it always happen, since by their logic, time for them works in a loop? But anyway, the main thing was, excluding the time thing, was how those creatures might have existed with that kind of body plan if that kind of a creature were to exist, or how life would be on its planet. Anyways, that's it for now. I can say talking about these guys forever, but I'm gonna cut it short here. Cut it short, like, I know, this was not a short video. But nonetheless, it was very fun, and I love alien creatures. Thanks so much for watching. This has been Ultiori. You ask, we answer.